I knew that face the second my son said her name. The kitchen clock was ticking the way it does when the house is too quiet, each little click like a finger tapping against glass. I stood at the sink with my hands under running water that was already warm, already clean, like my body didn't know what to do with the fear that had suddenly woken up inside me. My son, Caleb, was in the doorway smiling like a boy again. 30 years old, broad shoulders, tired eyes from working too much, yet there it was, that hopeful softness I hadn't seen since he was a kid asking for pancakes on a Sunday. "Mom," he said, voice careful like he was holding something fragile. "I'm engaged." I turned, drying my hands on the dish towel. I tried to match his smile. I tried to be the kind of mother who doesn't flinch when life moves forward without asking permission. "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. Lord, I did. He stepped into the kitchen and reached across the table for my hand, the way he used to when he'd come home after scraping his knee. "And she's pregnant." It should have been joy. A grandbaby. A new chapter. Something light. But my chest tightened anyway, because the name he said next landed wrong in my ears, like a note played slightly off-key. "Her name is Marissa." The dish towel slipped in my fingers. My mind did that thing it still does, even after retirement, flipped open like a chart, searching for a file, a date, a room number. Caleb was talking, excited, explaining how they met, how fast it happened, how it just felt right. And all I could see was a hospital hallway, fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and coffee that had been sitting too long. I could hear a newborn cry, high and thin, and a young woman's voice, breathless and shaky, saying, "Please, don't tell him." I blinked hard, as if I could shake it loose. "Mom?" Caleb's smile faltered. "You okay?" I forced air into my lungs. "I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm just surprised." He laughed, relieved. "I knew you'd be shocked. But wait till you meet her. She's special. Special." That word sat heavy on my tongue. I nodded anyway. I told him how happy I was. I hugged him longer than usual, because sometimes your arms know what your mouth refuses to admit. And after he left, carrying his joy back out into the evening, I stood in my kitchen alone and listened to the clock. Tick, tick, tick. Because somewhere deep in my memory, a door had opened. And I wasn't sure I wanted to walk through it. Before all this, my life had been the kind that looked small from the outside, but felt full when you lived it day by day. I'd spent 34 years as a labor and delivery nurse. Not the glamorous kind you see on TV with perfect hair and dramatic music. The real kind, hair in a bun that never stayed, shoes that never truly dried out, and hands that learned how to be steady even when a room was falling apart. I delivered babies in the middle of storms, during power outages, during shifts that ran long because a mother just couldn't do it yet. I'd watched new fathers cry like children. I'd watched mothers who never got to hold their babies at all. And when I finally retired, my body thanked me in aches. My mind thanked me in silence. I learned how to drink tea slowly again. I learned how to sleep through the night without waking to phantom call bells. I lived alone in a modest little house with a creaky porch step and a garden I kept half alive. My husband, James, passed 7 years ago, heart attack in the middle of a normal Tuesday. The kind of loss that doesn't scream, just empties the room and leaves you staring at a coffee mug you can't bring yourself to wash. Caleb was my anchor after that. He didn't move back home. He had his own apartment across town, but he showed up like clockwork. He fixed things I didn't ask him to fix. He carried heavy bags. He sat at my table and ate my chicken stew like it was something sacred. He didn't talk much about dating. Not because he didn't want love, I don't think, but because life had taught him to be careful. He'd had one serious girlfriend in college that broke his heart clean in half. After that, he focused on work, on saving money, on being responsible, like he was trying to outrun something. So when he told me he was engaged, when he told me there was a baby coming, I felt a warmth rise up through me like sunlight. I wanted this for him. I wanted him to have the kind of family that fills rooms again. That night, I made a list in my head of all the things I could do. Knit a blanket. Look up stroller reviews. Clear out the hall closet for baby supplies. It was almost peaceful until my mind tripped again on that name. Marissa. The problem was, I didn't know if it was the same Marissa. Names are names. Faces can blend. Memory can play cruel tricks when you've seen thousands of women come through labor and delivery. But my body had reacted too fast. That wasn't just a passing thought. That was recognition, the kind that hits you like cold water. So I did what nurses do when something doesn't make sense. I looked for information. The next morning, I went into the little room I'd turned into a retirement office, which was really just a desk, a filing cabinet, and a box I never opened unless I had to. Inside that box were pieces of my old life, retirement certificate, a hospital badge I should have thrown away, a few thank you cards from families, and a small notebook where I'd written down things I didn't trust myself to remember. Not patient charts, not full names, nothing illegal. Just my own personal notes, dates of particularly hard deliveries, unusual complications, moments that stayed with me. Because sometimes a birth isn't just a birth. Sometimes it's a story you carry. I sat down with a cup of coffee and opened the notebook like I was opening a door to a house I hadn't visited in years. Page after page, my handwriting stared back at me, slanted, rushed, the way you write when you're half standing and someone is calling your name. Then, about halfway through, my fingers paused. A date from 2 years ago. A note I'd written in the margin. Teen mom. No support. Baby girl. Adoption talk. She cried, asked for secrecy. My throat went dry. Next to that, I'd written a first name. Marissa. I stared at it until my eyes started to blur. 2 years ago wasn't long. 2 years ago meant that baby would still be a toddler, still learning words, still needing a mother who shows up. I sat back in my chair, my coffee untouched, and tried to steady my breathing. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was another Marissa. But my hands were already shaking the way they only do when my instincts are screaming. I didn't want to ruin my son's happiness over a fear I couldn't prove. I didn't want to become the kind of mother who sees problems everywhere and calls it protection. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I decided I needed to meet her. In person. Under good lighting. With my eyes wide open. Because if this woman was who I thought she was, then my son wasn't just marrying a fiancé. He was stepping into someone's unfinished story. And I had a terrible feeling that a child somewhere was still waiting for the part where someone comes back. I met Marissa for the first time on a Sunday afternoon, the kind that smells like roasted chicken and furniture polish. Caleb brought her to my house with the careful enthusiasm of a man presenting something precious. He parked crooked in the driveway, helped her out of the car, and kept one hand hovering near her lower back like he was already practicing fatherhood. She was pretty in a quiet, intentional way. Long brown hair pulled back neatly. Light makeup. A soft cardigan that looked chosen to make a good impression. She held herself with that particular posture I recognized immediately, the guarded straightness of someone who had learned how to survive by appearing composed. When she smiled at me, it was polite. Warm, even. But it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mrs. Harlan," she said, extending her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you." Her voice. That was the first real blow. It was deeper than I remembered, steadier, but the cadence was there. The slight pause before certain words. The way she swallowed before finishing a sentence, like she was bracing herself. I took her hand. Her palm was cool and a little damp. "Please," I said gently. "Call me Ruth." She laughed softly, glancing at Caleb. "Ruth, then." I studied her face as we moved into the living room. I noted the faint scar near her eyebrow she'd tried to hide with makeup. I noted how she scanned the space before sitting, choosing the chair that kept her closest to the door. Old habits. We sat down, and Caleb launched into conversation like he was hosting a dinner party, talking about their plans, the baby's due date, how they were thinking of moving closer once the lease was up. Marissa nodded along, one hand resting on her belly. She was early in the pregnancy, just beginning to show. But she touched that spot often, like she was reminding herself it was real. So I asked carefully, keeping my voice neutral, "Where did you grow up, Marissa?" She hesitated. "Just a beat too long." "Here," she said. Mostly. "And your family?" I asked. Her fingers tightened in the fabric of her cardigan. "It's complicated." Caleb reached for her hand. "She's been through a lot," he said, protective. But she's strong. She smiled at him then, truly this time. And I felt something twist in my chest that wasn't quite anger. It was grief. For him. For her. For something unspoken sitting between us. I excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of checking the roast. My hands shook as I pulled the oven door open, heat rushing my face. I knew her. Not just from a name in a notebook. I knew her from a delivery room where the lights were too bright and the air was thick with fear. I knew her from the way she cried without sound, tears sliding down into her hairline as she begged me not to call anyone. I stood there longer than necessary, breathing in the smell of chicken and rosemary, grounding myself. When I returned, Marissa was laughing at something Caleb said. She looked happy, or at least practiced at appearing so. Dinner passed without incident. We talked about work, about baby names, about how strange it feels when your life suddenly becomes about someone else's heartbeat. But underneath every word, there was a current running fast and dark. At one point, I asked casually, "Is this your first?" The room went quiet. Caleb turned to her, surprised. "Oh, yeah. I guess we never talked about that part." Marissa's smile stiffened. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to him. "Yes," she said. "It is." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. I didn't challenge her. Not then. I just nodded and changed the subject, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let a lie hang in the air and show its shape. After they left that night, I sat alone at my table long after the dishes were done. I replayed every look, every pause, every deflection. I wasn't wrong. But knowing something and proving it are two very different things. The next few days were a blur of old instincts waking up inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about that baby from 2 years ago, the one whose first cry I could still hear if I closed my eyes. I remembered how Marissa had turned her face to the wall afterward. "I can't do this," she'd whispered. "I'm not ready." I'd sat beside her bed and held her hand. I'd told her about options. I'd told her about resources. I'd told her she wasn't alone even if she felt like she was. She'd nodded. She'd cried. She'd asked me not to write her parents' names on the board. "I just want a clean start," she'd said. At the time, I believed her pain. I still do. But pain doesn't erase responsibility. I went back to my box again. I dug deeper this time, careful not to cross lines I couldn't uncross. I remembered the adoption counselor who'd come in late that night. The way Marissa had signed papers with trembling hands. The way she'd asked twice if she could change her mind later. "You can," the counselor had said. Within the window. But Marissa never came back. The baby had gone into temporary foster care while things were processed. I remembered feeling unsettled by how quickly Marissa disappeared from the system. Now, 2 years later, she was engaged to my son, pregnant again, and telling the world this was her first. I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining a little girl with dark hair and Marissa's eyes, learning to walk somewhere without knowing her mother's face. I wasn't angry yet. I was afraid. Afraid for that child. Afraid for my son. Afraid of what would happen if I spoke, and what would happen if I didn't. So I made a decision. I would talk to Marissa. Alone. Not as an investigator. Not as a nurse. But as a woman who had held her once at her most vulnerable. Because if she was going to join my family, then secrets like this didn't stay buried. And if there was a child she'd left behind, then someone had to speak for them. I asked Marissa to meet me for coffee 3 days later. I didn't tell Caleb. Not because I wanted to deceive him, but because I knew he'd try to soften the moment before it ever had a chance to be honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, deserves to stand on its own feet. She arrived early. I could tell because when I walked into the cafe, she was already seated near the window, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Her shoulders were stiff, her gaze drifting to the door every few seconds like she was measuring her exits. That, too, I remembered. "Ruth," she said when she saw me, standing too quickly. "Hi." "Hi, Marissa." I slid into the chair across from her. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon pastries. A radio hummed softly somewhere behind the counter. Normal sounds. Normal life. She smiled, but it faltered when she realized I wasn't returning it. "I'm glad you came," I said gently. Of course. She swallowed. You said you wanted to talk. Yes. I let the silence sit for a moment. Long enough for her to feel it. Long enough for myself, too. I wasn't here to accuse, not yet. I was here to observe. How are you feeling? I asked, nodding toward her stomach. She relaxed just a fraction. Tired. Nervous. Excited. All of it. That's normal, I said. Every pregnancy carries its own weight. Her fingers tightened around the mug. I leaned back slightly, keeping my tone calm. Marissa, how old are you? She blinked, surprised. 24. I nodded. And where were you living 2 years ago? There it was. The shift. Her eyes flicked up to mine, sharp now. Guarded. She didn't answer right away. I moved around a bit, she said finally. Why? I didn't rush. I never rushed patients when they were close to something painful. I knew how to wait. Because, I said slowly, I was a labor and delivery nurse for a long time. And there are moments that stay with you. Her face drained of color. The cafe noise faded for me, the clink of cups, the murmur of conversation, until all I could hear was the sound of her breathing. She started, then stopped. I delivered a baby 2 years ago, I continued softly. A little girl. Her hands began to shake. The mother was young, I said. Scared. Alone. She asked me not to tell anyone. Marissa's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. One slipped down her cheek, and she brushed it away angrily. You don't know what you're talking about, she whispered. I know your voice, I said gently. I know the scar near your eyebrow. I know the way you say, mostly, when you don't want to explain something. She pushed her chair back slightly, as if she might stand. But she didn't. I was going to tell him, she said suddenly. Too fast. Too defensive. When? I asked. She broke then. Her shoulders folded inward, and she covered her face with her hands, a quiet sob escaping her chest like it had been waiting there all along. I didn't abandon her, she said, muffled. I couldn't keep her. I had nothing. No family. No money. I was drowning. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. I thought adoption would give her a better life, she continued. I thought, if I disappeared, it would be easier. For everyone. And when you met my son? I asked. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were red, raw. I wanted to be someone new. Someone he wouldn't look at with pity. I didn't know how to bring her into it without losing everything. I nodded slowly. But you didn't lose everything, I said. You lost her. She flinched. I didn't think she'd still matter like this, she whispered. That sentence landed heavier than any confession. She matters, I said firmly. Whether you're ready or not. Silence stretched between us again. This one thick and heavy. Finally, I asked, where is she now? Marissa shook her head. I don't know. After I signed the papers, I stopped answering calls. I blocked the agency. I told myself it was over. I closed my eyes briefly. That baby hadn't just been adopted. She'd been left. I opened my eyes and met Marissa's gaze. You are about to bring another child into the world. And you're marrying my son under the weight of a lie. Tears streamed down her face now, unrestrained. I love him, she said. I swear I do. I believe you, I said. But love built on silence cracks under pressure. She nodded slowly, defeated. What are you going to do? She asked, voice small. I took a breath. This was the line between compassion and responsibility. I'm going to give you a chance, I said. You will tell Caleb the truth. All of it. Before the wedding. Before the baby comes. Her eyes widened. You can't. I can, I said quietly. Because if you don't, I will. Her mouth opened, then closed again. And Marissa, I added, softer now, that little girl deserves to know her story didn't end in a hospital room. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll tell him, she whispered. I stood, placing a few bills on the table. My legs felt unsteady, but my resolve was firm. As I walked out of the cafe, sunlight hit my face, warm and unyielding. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Because the hardest part wasn't uncovering the truth. It was knowing what that truth would cost everyone once it stepped into the light. Caleb didn't call me that night. And I knew, before my phone ever stayed silent long enough to confirm it, that Marissa had kept her promise. I slept poorly, my body caught in that strange half-wakefulness that comes when you're waiting for a storm to finish passing through someone else's house. Every few hours, I checked the clock. I imagined Caleb pacing his apartment. I imagined Marissa crying. I imagined words said too fast, words said too late. At 6:14 the next morning, my phone rang. "Mom," Caleb said, and his voice was already broken. I sat up slowly, the cool edge of the bed pressing into my thigh. "I'm here," I said. "She told me," he said. "About everything." I closed my eyes. "I didn't know," he continued. "I swear to you, I didn't know." "I know," I said. And I meant that too. There was a long pause. I could hear his breathing, ragged, uneven, like he was trying to keep something from spilling over. "She said you were there," he said finally. "When it happened? When the baby was born?" "Yes," I said. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" That question hurt more than I expected. "Because it wasn't my truth to expose," I said carefully. "Until it became your life." Another pause. Then, quietly, "Is that little girl mine?" "No," I said, firm. "She was born 2 years ago, long before you met." His breath released all at once. Relief, mixed with something darker, disgust maybe, grief. "She left her," he said. "She just left." "She was young," I said. "Scared. And wrong." Silence again. The kind that feels like standing at the edge of something irreversible. I asked her why, he said. "She said she wanted to forget who she was back then." "And what did you say?" I asked. "I said I didn't recognize the woman she was describing," he said. "Because the Marissa I know wouldn't do that." My chest tightened. "People can be both things," I said gently. "Who they were and who they're trying to become." He didn't answer right away. "I told her I needed space," he said. "She's staying with a friend." "That was wise," I said. He let out a humorless laugh. "You always say that when you're trying not to tell me what to do." I smiled despite myself. Old habits. We hung up shortly after. No solutions. No forgiveness yet. Just truth, sitting heavy between us. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Caleb came by the house more often, but he didn't stay long. He drank coffee without tasting it. He stared out the window like he was looking for something he'd dropped and couldn't find again. "I keep thinking about that little girl," he said one afternoon, rubbing his hands together. "She's out there somewhere, Mom." And Marissa just moved on. "Moving on doesn't mean moving forward," I said. He nodded. I asked Marissa if she wanted to find her. And? She said she doesn't know if she deserves to. That answer told me everything. I didn't hate Marissa. I never did. But I also didn't protect her from the weight of what she'd done. Actions echo. Especially the quiet ones. 2 weeks later, Caleb told me he'd postponed the wedding. Not canceled, he said. Just paused. "And the baby?" I asked. He sighed. "That's the hardest part. I already love that child. And that makes everything else messy, eh? Life rarely gives us clean lines." Word traveled faster than I expected. Not details, Caleb was careful about that, but enough for people to sense something had shifted. The engagement announcement disappeared from social media. The registry link went quiet. Family members started calling me instead of him, trying to read between my carefully chosen words. "Caleb and Marissa are working through some things," I told them. Privately. It wasn't a lie, just incomplete. The real consequence came a month later when Marissa made a choice I hadn't anticipated. She showed up at my door alone. Her eyes were hollow, her face thinner. She looked younger than I remembered, like the girl from that hospital bed had finally caught up to her. "I want to find her," she said without preamble. I didn't invite her in right away. I studied her. I measured the space between us. "Why no?" I asked. "Because every time I feel this baby move," she said, pressing her hand to her stomach, "I think about the one who didn't get to stay." I stepped aside and let her in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place Caleb had stood weeks earlier, joy shining in his eyes. Life has a way of reusing rooms for different chapters. "I don't know where to start," she said. "I do," I said. "And if you're doing this, you're doing it right. With transparency. With patience. and with no expectations. She nodded, tears slipping free. Together, we contacted the agency. We learned what we could. Not everything, but enough. The child was in a stable foster placement. Healthy. Loved. Not forgotten. That knowledge changed something in Marissa. It didn't erase her guilt, but it softened the sharpest edges. Caleb stayed distant, watching from the sidelines. He didn't rush forgiveness. I was proud of him for that. The truth didn't explode our lives. It unfolded them. And in the quiet aftermath, each of us had to decide who we were willing to become. The first time Marissa asked if I would go with her, I said no. Not because I didn't care, but because this wasn't something she could borrow my strength for. If she was going to face the consequences of her past, she had to do it standing on her own feet. I'll help you prepare, I told her, sitting across from her at the kitchen table. I'll tell you what to expect. I'll tell you what not to expect. But the door, you have to walk through that yourself. She nodded, eyes downcast. I understand. Preparation didn't look like anything dramatic. There were no speeches, no rehearsed apologies. Just long conversations about responsibility, boundaries, and the kind of patience that doesn't get rewarded right away. You don't get to decide what role you play in that child's life, I told her one afternoon. You only get to decide whether you show up honestly. She listened. Really listened. And that was new. Caleb didn't join us for those talks. He kept his distance, which I respected. Love doesn't heal on a schedule, and trust doesn't rebuild just because someone asks nicely. Still, I could see the toll it was taking on him. He moved through life like a man carrying a box he couldn't set down. He loved Marissa. He loved the baby she was carrying. And now he was forced to reconcile that love with a truth that made him question his own judgment. One evening, he sat across from me on the porch, the air heavy with summer heat and cicada noise. I don't know if I can marry her, he said quietly. I didn't rush to answer. I don't know if I cannot, he continued. And that scares me more. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Whatever you choose, I said, make sure it's a choice you can live with, not one you make out of fear. He nodded, eyes fixed on the yard. Do you think people can really change? Yes, I said. But change doesn't erase responsibility. It just decides what you do next. A week later, Marissa went to meet the caseworker. She came back pale and shaking, but upright. They said I can't just step back in, she told me. That it has to be slow, supervised. That the foster parents come first. As they should, I said. She nodded, swallowing hard. I don't get to be her mother. No, I said gently. But you get to be her truth. That distinction broke her. She cried quietly at my table, her shoulders trembling, one hand instinctively resting on her belly. I didn't hold her this time. I didn't need to. She wasn't alone, but she wasn't being rescued either. That night, Caleb called me. She told me she went, he said. And how do you feel about that? I asked. Torn, he admitted. But proud. A little. That word mattered. The public consequences didn't come with shouting or scandal. They came with absence. The wedding plans stayed paused. The baby shower never happened. Friends stopped asking questions and started offering awkward sympathy. Marissa lost a few people in the process, friends who preferred the polished version of her story. She didn't chase them. That told me something, too. The foster parents agreed to a mediated meeting. Marissa asked me again if I would come. This time, I said yes. The room was small and brightly lit, intentionally neutral. The kind of place designed to keep emotions contained. The little girl sat on the floor with a set of wooden blocks, stacking and unstacking them with serious concentration. She had Marissa's hair. Marissa's hands. Marissa froze in the doorway. That's her, she whispered. I stayed back. This wasn't my moment. The foster mother knelt beside the child and spoke softly. Sweetheart, this is Marissa. The girl looked up. Curious. Unafraid. Marissa knelt too, slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter something fragile. Hi, she said, voice barely holding together. The child studied her for a long moment, then went back to stacking blocks. And that, more than anything, was the reality. No recognition. No dramatic reunion. Just a child who was safe, loved, and not waiting. Marissa cried afterward. Not loudly. Not performatively. Just the quiet grief of understanding that some doors don't reopen the way we imagine. Caleb came by later that night. He didn't ask details. He didn't need them. I've been thinking, he said, about what kind of father I want to be. And? I asked. I want to be the kind who doesn't run when things get hard, he said, but also the kind who doesn't lie to himself. We sat with that for a while. In the end, Caleb chose to stay, but not rush. He moved out of the apartment they'd planned to share and into a smaller place of his own. He attended doctor's appointments. He asked questions. He watched Marissa carefully, not with suspicion, but with clarity. They didn't get married before the baby came. And that, I think, was the truest consequence of all. Because love didn't vanish, but illusion did. The baby was born on a quiet Thursday morning, just after sunrise. Caleb called me from the hospital parking lot, his voice trembling in that way it only does when joy and fear arrive together. She's here, he said. Mom, she's perfect. I closed my eyes and let myself breathe for the first time in days. Even after a lifetime in delivery rooms, the miracle of that moment never dulls. I didn't rush to the hospital. Not because I wasn't welcome, but because this wasn't my delivery to manage. I'd learned, long ago, when to step forward and when to let life unfold without my hands guiding it. When I did arrive later that afternoon, Marissa was propped up in bed, hair pulled back, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. And yet, there was something different in her eyes this time. Not panic. Presence. Caleb stood beside her, holding the baby with reverent awkwardness, like he was afraid to breathe too loudly. This is Ruth, he said softly to the newborn, as if introducing her to the world mattered. Your grandma. The word caught in my throat. I washed my hands, instinctively, even though no one had asked me to. Old habits again. Some things never leave you. When I took the baby into my arms, she settled immediately. Warm. Solid. Alive. Marissa watched me closely. You were right, she said quietly. I looked up. About what? She matters, Marissa said. All of them. I nodded. That was all there was to say. The weeks after the birth were not easy, but they were honest. Caleb took time off work. He learned how to change diapers with one hand. He learned which cry meant hunger and which meant frustration. He paced the floor at night, whispering nonsense words to a baby who didn't care what he said, only that he stayed. Marissa struggled in ways she didn't expect. Not with loving the baby, but with the mirror motherhood held up to her past. Every first milestone was a reminder of what she'd missed the first time. Every laugh carried an echo. She didn't hide from it anymore. One afternoon, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her daughter sleeping in a carrier against her chest. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself, she said. You don't have to, I replied. You just have to live responsibly with what you know now. She nodded slowly. Caleb remained cautious. He loved Marissa, but love had grown quieter, more deliberate. He didn't rush toward promises. He showed up instead. That mattered more. Months passed. Marissa continued supervised contact with her first child. Not as a mother reclaiming space, but as a woman acknowledging truth. She sent letters. She respected boundaries. She stopped asking for outcomes and focused on consistency. The foster parents, steady, kind people, noticed. I don't know what this will become, the foster mother said to me once, during a review meeting I attended at Marissa's request. But she's doing this the right way. That was the highest praise available. Caleb and Marissa didn't announce anything. They lived quietly. They learned how to co-parent without the safety net of certainty. And slowly, something shifted. Trust didn't return all at once. It came in pieces. In small, repeatable actions. In the way Marissa spoke about her past without defensiveness. In the way she included truth instead of editing it out. One evening, nearly a year after the baby was born, Caleb showed up at my house with takeout and an expression I recognized. Mom, he said, setting the bags down. I asked her to marry me again. I didn't smile right away. And? I asked. She said yes, he said. But this time, we're doing it differently. I waited. We're telling our story honestly, he continued. No shortcuts. No pretending. I felt tears gather in my eyes, unexpected and sharp. That's all I ever wanted for you, I said. The wedding was small. No white dress that felt symbolic. No grand declarations. Just family, a few friends, and a baby who tried to eat the program. Marissa stood beside my son with steady hands and clear eyes. When she looked at me during the ceremony, there was no fear in her gaze. Only accountability. Years have passed since then. The little girl from 2 years before, now older, remains where she is loved and rooted. Marissa stays connected in the way that serves the child, not herself. Caleb became the father he wanted to be. And I learned, once again, that love doesn't mean protecting people from the truth. It means protecting what's right, even when it hurts. Because secrets don't disappear when we bury them. They wait. And when they surface, they ask us who we're willing to become. Sometimes I sit at my kitchen table in the early morning, when the house is quiet and the light comes in soft through the curtains, and I think about how close I came to staying silent. How easy it would have been to tell myself it wasn't my place. How tempting it would have been to protect my son's happiness by pretending I didn't recognize a name, a voice, a moment from long ago. Silence can feel kind in the moment. It can feel like mercy. But silence has a cost. What I learned through all of this, through the fear, the confrontation, the waiting, the slow rebuilding, is that truth doesn't exist to punish us. It exists to give us a chance to choose who we're going to be next. Marissa didn't get a perfect ending. Neither did Caleb. Neither did that little girl who will always carry a story that started before she could speak. But what they did get was honesty. And sometimes, that's the only kind of foundation strong enough to hold a real life. I'm proud of my son, not because he forgave quickly, but because he chose carefully. I'm proud of Marissa, not because she erased her past, but because she stopped running from it. And I'm proud of myself for trusting my instincts, even when they led me into discomfort instead of peace. So I'll leave you with this question, the one I still ask myself when the house gets quiet. If you discovered a truth that could change everything, but staying silent would be easier, what would you do? Would you speak up, knowing it might hurt the people you love? Or would you let the secret live on, hoping it never finds its way back? If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've lived through something similar or faced a moment where truth and love pulled you in different directions, your voice matters here. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, told with honesty, heart, and hard-earned lessons, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel.